Today we are going to be pitting 28 brave competitors up against each other in search of finding what is the best, most affordable board game out there, gives you the best bang for your buck in this edition of the board game Deathmatch. That's right, we did one of these back in April of 2022, and we thought, you know what? We're gonna do it again because it's expensive just living in this world, and it is time for me, your savior of board games, as I've been called quite a few times by numerous people, don't look it up, to help you out with all of your purchasing needs. Back in April, we did super affordable games that were under 20 bucks Canadian, and this list is games between 20 and 30 bucks Canadian, so you can find them for pretty cheap out there at your local store or somewhere else where you spend currency to purchase things, not under the ditch in Hobo Joe's backyard. Yes, he is very good at his 5-finger discount. And yes, you should keep that location a secret because that's how I get all my games and stop telling everybody because the selection is limited. Here are the games that are facing off in this month's Deathmatch. You can see for the month of February, all throughout, we've been voting on one pairing every day until we crowned a champion. That's over on the Room and Board Patreon Discord. If you're interested, well, hey, sign up for Patreon and join us there and join in the fun of voting. And if you're not, well, that's okay. I'll always put out these recaps every month so that everyone can participate in the fun. And I like this format because I want to pit 28 games against each other and come out with one winner. I like seeing 27 losers because then I feel good about myself as well. I feel like I'm in good company. So right now, in the comments, make your predictions at which one of these games will be crowned the champion. And if you're right, well, you get a cookie. And if you're wrong, I get a cookie. And I look forward to eating many cookies and spoiling my supper. That's enough preamble. Let's get right into the video. I'm gonna be snappy and fast. Well, this first round, I always like to explain all the different games in case you haven't heard of them, in case you wanna go check out any of these. They'll all be great deals here, but one will be the best deal. And as per Deathmatch rules, all the others will be burned for all eternity, so you better get your hands on them quick if you're interested. Round one, first up, we have Hive Pocket versus Draftosaurus. And this is specifically Hive Pocket. Hive Pocket is the smaller pocket version of Hive, which makes Hive go extinct. Actually, that should have been on the list that I just did over on Rado's channel about games that replaced other games. Hive Pocket should replace Hive in your collection because it is the cheaper version and you get all of that bang for your buck packed into just a smaller package that you can take anywhere and pull out and make a little hive. The premise of the game is that every player will have a queen bee. If you got the specific Beyonce promo stickers, well then yes, yours might look like Beyonce, but for the rest of us, it's just a regular queen bee. And your goal is to surround your opponent's queen bee while keeping yours not surrounded. You want them to be overrun by the paparazzi and you can go on and keep making your hit songs. I think there is a branding deal here, Beyonce, and if you'd like to give me a cut of this, I would be more than happy. Hive Pocket is a very fun little strategy game. All of your pieces do and move in different ways, and it's about navigating those very chess-like to lock the queen down. It's up against Draftosaurus, which is a simple drafting game, but instead of most drafting games where you're drafting cards, you're taking one card at a time and passing them along, this one, you're drafting meeples. You're drafting little dinosaur meeples and you're trying to make the best dinosaur park, as all or most dinosaur-themed games are all about. There's a slight constraint of what dinosaurs you can choose. Someone will roll a dice and that will stop you from adding certain dinosaurs into your pen. There'll be a ban on Triceratops forever, or at least for that one round, and you'd have to choose something else. I like Hive Pocket quite a bit. I like Hive quite a bit. I don't own it, but I want to add it to my collection because I think there's a lot of replayability there. I haven't played Draftosaurus, so naturally my inclination would be to vote for Hive Pocket, and so naturally all the other voters decided, well, no, we'll make sure that Draftosaurus moves on and Hive Pocket is burned for eternity. Draftosaurus wins in a very solid 20-8 vote. Next round, we've got Land versus Sea. It's one game versus Skull. Land versus Sea versus Skull. Which one of these three will come out on top? Well, maybe it's both Land versus Sea. which is this tile laying game. So you'll have tiles that will have land and, surprisingly, sea on them, and you'll put them down and create a larger board, very much like Carcassonne. This is a 2-player game. There's rules for 4-player team battles, but it's a 2-player game, and you're trying to create swaths of land or sea, depending upon what you're into. Hey, you can have fun on land and on sea, or so I've been told. But for this game, you're going to pick just one of them and try to get the most points. Skull is a bluffing game that is a very simple premise. You have a bunch of coasters, basically beer coasters. You can play this with beer coasters, really. You don't even need the game. And they have either skulls on them, or they have flowers or roses. It used to be called Skulls and Roses. Now it's just called Skulls. And on your turn, you'll put down a disc in front of you face down, and then you'll say how many beer coasters you think you can flip over, starting with your own, before you reveal a skull. And so naturally, you're going to want to put flowers down, right? So you don't get caught. But you want to convince other people that you have not put down skulls and you really have put down skulls, so that when they bid higher than you and everybody passes, they're forced to reveal coasters one at a time. And if they reveal a skull, they lose. They lose one of their coasters. The rounds play quick, it's bluffing. You don't want to get things wrong. That's the basic premise of the game. I, of course, was more interested in Skull. No, that's not true. I like Skull and I want to add Skull to my collection, but I think Land vs. Sea sounds really good, and I heard a lot of buzz about Land vs. Sea, and then I heard nothing about it. So I don't know if it was just the new hotness for like a blip, and then people forgot about it, and I don't see many people talking about it, or if there are just so many great games out there that people forgot about it, and it's still really good. I want to try Land vs. Sea, and so I am happy that Land vs. Sea does move on. This is a tough matchup for me, but I think I would probably vote for Land vs. Sea just in terms of the strategic elements that you can add to it. All of these games in this similar price range feel like good purchases to me because I personally am very, very cheap. And so I like being able to highlight these games. If I had to choose between the two, well, Skull I could play with coasters, right? So the better value to me, I think, also would be Land vs. Sea. And that's exactly who moves on in that 22-11 vote. Next round, 2 more affordable games. Welcome to versus Cat in the Box. Welcome to is a flip and write, a roll and write. You have a sheet of paper and you're going to flip up 3 cards, and then you can take one of those cards and put it somewhere on your paper, and you're trying to build the best neighborhood. You've likely heard of Welcome to, and now you know how to play it. Like many roll and writes, you'll want to combo things together, and you can never fill out your sheet completely efficiently, but you want to get the best score possible. Cat in the Box has been all the rage recently, and it's a trick-taking game. I like trick-taking games a lot. This one is interesting, though, because all of the cards don't have a suit on them. And they don't have a suit on them until you play it, and you declare that suit. So if I have an 8 in my hand, and I play it down, I can say, yeah, that's the 8 of hearts. And then everybody else who has an 8 in their hand, well, their 8 is no longer the 8 of hearts. It must be either the diamonds, the spades, or the clubs, right? That's the example. And there's a little board on the side where you can mark has already been taken. And so as you play through, the options become limited, and you're kind of fighting for who can play what first. It sounds very fun. I haven't played it, but it was all the rage last year as well. And it also has something that I really enjoy in games where you have to predict your bid. You have to predict how many tricks you're going to get. You can't just play willy-nilly. You have to commit to it beforehand and then see if you can bid. So I think Cat in the Box looks really fun. Welcome to, though, is kind of a stalwart favorite. Welcome to came onto the scene and really conquered that roll and write genre, packing a lot of game into a really small box. And so it was very close, but Welcome to ended up taking it in a 15-13 vote, which then turned into a 16-15 vote. So the final score was 16-15 after all the undecided votes were tallied. Over on the Discord, if you like both games or you want to throw in a die of chaos that I certainly won't manipulate for my own benefit, like Dexter from Dexter's Lab.
41! 40!
No.
43!
Well, how's he going to outroll the... Oh, no, that's...
49! You all fraud!
That's poor sportsmanship. That's what that is. I honor the dice rolls completely. This provides a little bit of a random element, and if you're undecided between the two, you can cast an undecided vote. There are many many new rules that evolve over the course of this bracket game that we play over the course of the month. Over on the Discord, doesn't matter. Welcome to was leading, and it stays leading, and it moves on into the next round. But it was close. It was a really close vote, and much closer than I expected it to be, knowing how much people enjoy Welcome to. Next round, we have One Deck Dungeon versus Kingdomino. Kingdomino used to be $20 Canadian, and now it's moved up to $25 Canadian. I still think it's a really good value game for the component quality that you get in there. We're talking about Kingdomino now, so I'll keep going. If you haven't played Kingdomino, there's a game, Acropolis, which came out recently, which utilizes a lot of the same scoring ideas. You are collecting domino pieces, and some of them will have crowns on them, and you are building a little landscape grid. So it's kind of tile laying mixed with set collection, if you like to speak in mechanics terms, as you are assembling these grids, and your score is the number of crowns times the number of pieces in a connected, adjacent, orthogonal group. So if I have 4 pieces of grass and I have 1 crown in that grass, then that's worth 4 points. If I had 7 crowns in that 4 patch of grass, then that would be worth 28 points. 4 times 7. So you can really rack up the points in that interesting way, and the game ebbs and flows about who gets to pick what piece. I like playing it a 2-player because you can get a 7x7 grid instead of a 5x5 grid if you're playing with more players, but you know, it's pretty fun. It's up against One Deck Dungeon, which is this rogue-like game where you're constantly going through this dungeon that's different every time, fighting baddies, and it's just a deck of cards. And as you go through, it gets progressively harder and harder, and you're leveling up your character until you fight the final boss and you take them out, or they take you out. It kind of has a little bit of a campaign element to it as you progress through, and you can do multiple runs, and it's that campaign element that we were talking a little bit about that helped push it forward in this vote. I thought Kingdomino was going to walk the floor with this. I used to think Kingdomino was one of the best value games out there because it's a nice chunky little game, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a good cottage game, and I expected to win handily. That is not the case. One Deck Dungeon does move on in a 20-14 vote. I think it feels like we're speeding through these more than other death matches. I'm trying to remain focused, or it could just be because of the price point. Generally, you get games that aren't too complicated, and you can distill the necessary information. I feel like I've been giving more information about these games than I have in the past in a smaller amount of time, and that's also great. It's great being able to have these affordable games that you can bring out to the table, teach quickly. Some people refer to these as filler games. I don't think there's all filler games on this list, though. I think this is a really good list of solid games that you could end up playing for most of a game night, and that's one of the ones that's facing off next. We have Paris, la Cité de Lumiere, versus One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Paris is a 2-player board game where you're trying to light up the most lamps. You want to make Paris the most beautiful, lit up city in all of the countryside. Because of course the most well-lit buildings are the most praised by passengers. You want to light them up from the inside too, so that everybody can see you cooking your dinner or sitting on the couch or doing whatever you do in your house. Playing various games that have to do with spices. Who knows what you might want to do? And it kind of takes place in 2 phases. In the first phase, you can place tiles, you can grow your reserve of buildings that you're going to want to light up later. And in the second phase, you can then build on top of stuff that you've already placed. So it's not completely permanent because, as we all know from the catacombs in Paris, you build up. You just build on top of stuff and you stuff all of your dirty secrets down below. And speaking of dirty secrets, one of you is a werewolf, and who knows who it is. That's One Night Ultimate Werewolf. This game is fantastic. Often we pull it out and we're like, yeah, this could be a filler game, and then we play 10, 15 rounds in a night and say, oh man, we were going to play something else, but we just kept on going with one more round of Werewolf. I love this game because it is Werewolf, but it's a 5-minute round. Everybody closes their eyes, an app walks you through what you need to do, you open your eyes, you try to kill a werewolf. If you're the town, if you're the werewolf, you try not to get killed, and if you're the best role in the game, the tanner, you try to get murdered. I always want to be the tanner. I don't think I've ever won as the tanner. And that's unbelievable to me because I'm just realizing this now, and I've never won as the tanner. And I try so hard to be the tanner every time. And I've played this game, I don't know how many rounds I've played of this game, at least 100. At least 100 rounds, maybe 200 rounds of this game, and I don't think I've ever won as the tanner. And that will keep me depressed for the rest of the day. Yeah. Oh. And this one was a really close vote. I wasn't sure which way it would go. Some people don't feel that great about social deduction, but the good part about One Night Werewolf is that it doesn't overstay its welcome, and you don't have to play a million rounds unless you're a maniac who wants to win as the tanner and won't let anyone leave their house until that person can win as the tanner. Not that I know any of these people, or am speaking from experience, or will be how my next game night goes. Absolutely not. But yeah, it was a really close match. Inevitably, though, One Night Werewolf pulls ahead in a 14-12 vote and moves on to the next round. Sorry, Paris, your light has gone out. Or gone up, because you're on fire. As per official deathmatch rules, every copy of Paris, la Cité de Lumiere, is burning right now, or at the end of this video. I don't make the rules. I'm just the messenger. And if you want to shoot me, well, I would kindly request that you don't do that or shoot anyone, please. Let's move ahead to Seven Wonders Duel versus Railroad Inc. Now, Seven Wonders Duel is a game that is very highly regarded, especially when you talk about two-player games, especially when you talk about games within this price point. It is the two-player version of Seven Wonders, where you have a number of cards out on the table, but you can only take certain cards when they're uncovered. So you build it in kind of like a pyramided one, and then a reverse pyramid in the other, and then in a cheerleader style pyramid where one of you is backwards, reverse positioning, something along those lines. You can do many positions of cards, flipping them back and forth. They're just cards. And that's where the strategy goes. You can see some of the cards that will be revealed later on, and some of the cards are hidden. So you have a little bit of information that you can work towards, but essentially it's back and forth, trying to get the most points, or winning by collecting a bunch of science symbols, or winning the little military battle that you're having, which is a tug of war mechanic where if I play enough military cards, I can get to the end of a track first and just win the game before it's even over. So there's multiple ways to win. A lot of variability here. Lots of people really like Seven Wonders Duel, but Railroad Inc. is another one of those roll and writes that has so many different expansions for it. And your goal is basically route connections. You're trying to connect as many exits on your board as possible. And so each round you roll some dice, and that'll determine what kind of routes you can build, and you're trying to build it the most efficiently. It comes in a very small box, lots of replayability, another of those roll and write fashion. I tried not to go too heavy on the roll and writes for this bracket, but often you'll find roll and writes in this price range because you can pack a lot of game into it if you're just doing it with a pencil and paper. And Railroad Inc. was ahead. Railroad Inc. was ahead in an 18-14 vote. People love Railroad Inc., or people aren't a fan of Seven Wonders Duel. I thought I was in the minority. I think Seven Wonders Duel is fun. I own it, and I'm probably not getting rid of it, but I don't really gravitate towards it. If I'm playing a two-player game, I'll gravitate towards other games that I enjoy more. I'd like to play it more, though. It's one of those things. And luckily, I will be able to play it more because a whole bunch of people used their extra votes to push Seven Wonders Duel forward into the tournament. Every tournament, every person gets one extra vote that they can use, and if they use it on a game that moves forward, then it's considered used. If they use it on a game that loses, they can use it again later down the road, and I just kind of keep track of all that as we proceed through this tournament game of pitting all the best games against each other. People love Seven Wonders Duel, and the people who love it a lot, and love it enough to want to push it forward in the competition. And so it is Seven Wonders that moves on in a 21-19 vote. 21! Just madness. Now, next round, over to the other side of the bracket, we have Onitama versus Jaipur. Both of these are two-player games. Onitama is kind of a chess-like tactical battling game where there's only 5 cards. There's only 5 things that you can do with your pieces, but the trick of this game is that whenever you use a card, it gets swapped with a card that was set to the side and will be going into your opponent's hand the next round. And so there's this flow of trying to hold on to certain ways to move your pieces and planning out how your opponent will move their pieces as you bounce back and forth trying to take each other out. It's a really interesting concept, and I like that it is so simple and still provides a lot of depth of strategy. It's up against Jaipur, which has been a two-player behemoth for the longest time. It used to be on a lot of lists of people who said, what's the best two-player game or two-player only game? And it's fun. It's a great back and forth of collecting sets. You'll have a row of cards out there and you can take cards and then play those cards in sets of 3 and 4 and 5 to get tokens. And those tokens have points on them. The person with the most points at the end of the round wins. But if you play more cards together, if you play 3s, 4s, and 5s and don't just sell 2 at a time, you get additional bonus tokens that give you extra points. So you may want to hold on to them. But the tokens that you get from the stack, they're usually better if you get them first. So you want to strike first and get the good points before your opponent. So there's a fun back and forth there. You're also going to be collecting these camels, which will allow you to trade multiple cards at a time and really accelerate how quickly you can get sets versus not. Very solid game. I've played a lot of Jaipur and I feel like I'm kind of sick of it at this point. But talking about it makes me realize how fun it actually is of this back and forth and makes me kind of want to play it again. This is tough. I feel Jaipur is usually on the upper end of that $20 to $30 range, and I wish it were on the bottom end of that $20 to $30 range. I've usually seen it for like 30 bucks Canadian, so maybe 20 US, 25 US, depending where you're getting it from. For 20 bucks Canadian, I feel like I would vote for Jaipur. But when it's at that sort of $30 range, I kind of lean towards voting Onitama. But it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is that the people have spoken, and the people have voted Jaipur through in a 21 to 12 vote. Once again proving that I'm a dumb idiot baby, but hey, I still appreciate you being here with me. Let's keep it going with our next round, Floriferous versus Fort. The Battle of the F Games. Wait, no, that's something different. Never mind. Floriferous is a game about plants. Spend the afternoon in your floriferous garden. Relax while enjoying this game of strolling through and collecting flowers. Find joy in the abundance of nature. It's very simple. You move a step through the garden, you get a flower card or a desire card. Maybe it is the Battle of the F Games. You get points for fulfilling your desires. It's just a good life lesson. And person with the most points wins. Very simple collecting cards as you keep on going through the game. Fort is a card game where you are trying to get the most friends ever. Okay, no, you're not actually trying to get the most friends, you're just trying to get the most points. And you can get points through toys and through collecting pizza or through getting new friends on your side. On your turn, you can play a type of friend. And then if your opponents have a matching card of that symbol, there's all different symbols, they can potentially follow that action and take additional actions. It's a really fun game in a small package that has a really neat flow to it, because whatever cards you don't use, everybody else around the table has the chance to take them from you. So if you have a really good combo of a lot of different symbols, you can only use 1 or 2 of those cards, you have to put all the other ones up and someone can steal it and then use it in their deck, or get points for the number of symbols in their deck at the end of the game. So there's this fun ebb and flow with Fort, and you're just collecting toys and pizza. Like, it's an adorable theme, great art. This is one where I was rooting for Fort the entire time, and I'm finally on the right side of history, and it is Fort that moves forward in an 18 to 10 vote. Next round, this is a big one. We have Biblios versus Codenames. Codenames needs no introduction, so I'm not going to introduce it, and I'm going to talk about Biblios instead. Biblios is set in 2 parts. If you're trying to get the most points for books in your library, doesn't matter. The basics of the game is there are 5 different colors. The person with the majority of points in those colors will get a dice representing a point value at the end of the game. And the reason why they're dice is because you can adjust them up or down throughout the game. So if I have all the reds, my red could actually be worth 6 points, and even though you have both blue and brown, those might have only been worth 3 and 2 respectively, so I could beat you just by going all in on red and focusing on moving and making the red books the most valuable. It takes place in 2 phases. There's a first phase, you'll draw a number of cards 1 at a time equal to the number of players plus 1, and you'll choose where they go. If I draw a card, I can say, okay, I really want to keep this card. Great. I'm going to keep that card, but then I can't keep any of the other ones that are going to come up. I draw another card, I can put it up in an open drafting for the rest of the players at the table, or I draw a card and I can put it in the auction phase, which is stage 2. Stage 2, you auction off all the leftover cards using gold that you've collected, bidding on the cards around the table, potentially bidding on the ways to move those dice up and down. And so knowing what you've put into the auction phase and waiting to bid on that thing is equally as important as getting the good cards in your hand in the first round. It's very fun, really solid, great price point, as are all of these games. Codenames falls into this category as well. It's only 20 bucks Canadian, and it's a game where you have likely played it. A team game of giving clues that hits still so well. I feel like I played a lot of Codenames when it first came out. Most people who I played it with really enjoyed it, non-gamers, I would say. And it's one of these games where I think, I don't want to play Codenames. I've played enough of that. And then when I do sit down to play it, I generally do enjoy it as well. So this is a tough match. I think I personally would vote for Biblios here because I think Biblios is kind of underrated, and I'm glad I get to talk about it in this aspect. It plays really quickly. I played it with my parents the other day and they said, oh yeah, I forgot how much I enjoyed this. But Codenames is hard to keep down and is a contender for this tournament. And unfortunately, Biblios does lose in a close vote, a 16-13 vote, and it is Codenames that does move on. Next round, we have another game that has really popped up on the scene. We have Radlands versus the Isle of Cats Explore and Draw. So Radlands is a 2-player head-to-head card game.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Well, we love those around here, where you're fighting over these 3 different locations. You're battling in these lanes, you're all drawing from a communal deck, you're trying to use your cards to the best of your ability to take down your opponent, gain control, and defeat them. Isle of Cats Explore and Draw is another roll and write, but it comes from that Isle of Cats pretty well-known and well-loved system. Isle of Cats is a game that I've yet to play, but it's a big polyomino game. And so this one, instead of taking the pieces, you're really just drawing the pieces on a little map. It makes it cheaper than the Isle of Cats. It still uses the same gameplay, and you're choosing a set of cards to use to create your thing instead of drafting the pieces. That's basically it. Try to fill up your boats with the most cats and get out of there before the evil wizard kills all of the cats. There's a Cruella de Vil narrative going on. You need to save those friggin' kittens and get the heck out of there. Unfortunately, Isle of Cats is not able to take out Radlands, which has just blown up in popularity. People love this game. And Radlands moves forward in a 24-15 vote. Lots of people came out for this vote, and lots of people threw their support behind Radlands. Let's keep it going. Next round, we have Sushi Go Party versus Herbaceous. Sushi Go Party is the bigger version of Sushi Go. It's a modular version of Sushi Go, which is a drafting card game. That's all it is. You get handed a hand of cards, you play one of those cards, you pass that hand to the next person, you take the other hand and keep going, trying to get the most points. They're all worth different things. Sushi Go Party adds in a bunch of different types of cards that you can mix and match together and create variable Sushi Go experiences. The regular Sushi Go is just one deck. This one gives you things you can play with, mixing and matching. My favorite of this is the miso soup, which I think you should always play with, where I've only played Sushi Go Party once, but it had miso soup. And the whole premise of miso soup is that if 2 people play miso soup at the same time, nobody gets the points. They discard the miso soup. But miso soup are worth a lot of points. Not that many, really. It's like 3 points. And that's significant, but there are other ways to chain things together to make up that difference. Doesn't matter. I had the most fun with this game just playing miso soup. I would announce to the table, hey, listen, you know if I got a miso soup in my hand, I'm gonna be playing it. And every time I would get a miso soup in my hand and I would play it. And every time somebody else would play a miso soup and we would get no points. And it just became a thing that I would do every single round. Whether I had a miso soup or not, I'd say, you know what I'm playing? I'm playing a miso soup. And people thought I wouldn't play the miso soup, but I would play the miso soup anytime I could. I played a miso soup. And that strategy did not work out in a strategic sense, but it did work out in a enjoyment sense. I had a wonderful time, and it made me love this game. Herbaceous is in that same vein of Floriferous. Herbaceous has a similar style of choosing where to put herb cards as Biblios. So you draw a card, and you can put it in the communal pile, or you can keep it. And if you do one or the other, you got to do the other thing with the random card at the top of the deck. And then you have these 4 containers in front of you where you can group different sets of herbs, and you can use that from the communal pile and your hand. And so you're trying to balance out when to use your containers and when to get the best herb collection. That's the basic premise of the game. But it doesn't matter, honestly. I'm sorry, Herbaceous. Actually, you sound very fun. But the miso soup gang, rise up, because Sushi Go is moving on with a very dominant 22-8 vote. We've reached our last round, the last round in this first grouping of games. Of course, we're going to see a few new games moving on because there were a number of buys, this taking place in February, and it only being 28 games, just how it works out. There's a couple buys, but these two did not get a buy. They have to fight for their spot, and we have Forbidden Island versus Bounce Off. Now, we'll get to Forbidden Island in a second, but we got to talk about Bounce Off. If you've seen one of these death matches before, you may have noticed Bounce Off has participated in 1 or 2 of them, and that's because it's one of the most versatile games out there. And coming in at $20 to $30, I mean, it feels a little bit like I've been wasting your time with all the other games, because it's very clear that Bounce Off is going to win and take... Sorry? Oh no, this just in. It turns out that my constant talking about the glories of Bounce Off, and let's be real, it is a glorious, glorious game filled with possibility. So much game packed into that small box. People talk about limitless combinations. Think about throwing these little balls into that grid and tell me how many combinations, how much replayability is this game going to give you, because the combinations are limitless, even more so than Bradley Cooper or whoever played it in the TV show, because they made one of those too. Unfortunately, I think I owe everyone an apology, because it seems like Amazon has heard the good word about Bounce Off, and the price is now closer to what Bounce Off is worth, let me be clear, but unfortunately it makes it ineligible for this bracket. I know you were all excited to see Bounce Off compete, but Bounce Off has been disqualified. I have to put my personal feelings aside as an honorable commissioner and disqualify Bounce Off. So we're going to bring in our alternate competitor who's been waiting at the door, just standing there, bursting to get in. Instead of the matchup that you've all tuned in for, Forbidden Island versus Bounce Off, we have to bring in a competitor that can fill the shoes of the generation of games that Bounce Off has produced. And so it's hard, really, to pick just one. So let's bring them all in. We have Forbidden Island versus Tiny Epic Everything. That's right, Tiny Epic Everything. Kingdoms, Defenders, Galaxies, Western, Quest, Zombies, Tactics, Mechs, Dinosaurs, Pirates, Dungeons, Viking, Crime, whatever that one was. That's upcoming, or I just covered it on Kickstarter, Crowdfunding Countdown every Monday. All of these games are taking on Forbidden Island. That's the order, actually, in which they came out. Back in 2014, it's almost been 10 years of Tiny Epic games. Tiny Epic games kind of represent the spirit of this deathmatch. They usually fall in that $30 Canadian range. They can just get in under here. Some of them might be a little bit more expensive, in which case they're ineligible. And we can't talk about them ever again. Not just in this video, but ever at all. But I wanted to bring this up in terms of talking about which is the best of the Tiny Epic series and get people's opinions. They all pack a very different game into a small box, and these are heavy games. These are not heavy, but they're chonky games. They will give you that strategic feeling that you may miss in some of the other lighter ones. I've heard that Tiny Epic Galaxies is the best one, but make sure you also sound off in the comments below of your favorite Tiny Epic game. The only Tiny Epic game that I've played is Tiny Epic Quest, and I thought it was okay, but it eventually left my collection because it was weird. It fell in that middle ground of they're so small and portable that I want to take them places, but I don't want to pull them out on a regular game night because I'm thinking, no, that's a travel game. I'll save that for when I'm traveling, you know? So they kind of landed in that weird zone for me. Forbidden Island is also one that I've had a different relationship with. It's basically Pandemic. You get 4 actions on your turn. The waters are constantly rising. Pieces of the island are being flipped over and then sinking into the ocean, and you have to travel around to try to get a certain number of cards. You discard them, you pick up a relic, you have to get all the relics and leave on a helicopter before the island sinks into the sea. But I just like Pandemic more, really. However, for this price point, you do get a solid Pandemic-style game, And I wasn't that into it, and then I played it again with people who were excited about it, and that made me more into it. So I think there's a really solid game there in that Forbidden Island Pandemic Light style. There's also a couple other Forbidden games, Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Sky, which I heard wasn't that good. But they also don't fall into this affordable category, so they're not to be included. I'm just looking through the Discord here. People are saying Tiny Epic Dinosaurs are some of their favorites. Galaxies, Western Defenders, Pirates. Galaxies is mentioned most often. But it doesn't matter because this was a very close vote. The breadth of the Tiny Epic catalog was no match for Forbidden Island, and it's Forbidden Island that moves ahead in a 20-19 vote, just by the skin of its teeth. But we don't have to worry about which Tiny Epic is the best, because they're all burnt. I'm sorry, that feels unfair to this contender who was so excited to participate, but you know what? Rules are rules, and we're on to the round of 16. We've made it to the round of 16. I'll be able to ramp it up a little bit quicker. We now know most of the games that are participating. I'll still explain what the other ones are moving forward, and then we will find out what is the best bang for your buck, what is the best valued game out of these 28 that will become the best affordable game deathmatch champion of 2023. And that starts with High Society versus Draftosaurus. Draftosaurus, we know, High Society is by Reiner Knizia, and it is very similar to the game QE, if you've heard of it. I have a review of that on my channel, where the premise is if you spend the most money on forbidding on things, you lose. So you have to spend the second most money if you even want to be in competition for the game. But of course, the person who spends the most money will probably have the most points. And so it's balancing that and keeping track of who's spending on what and just getting in under the wire to get the most points. And this one was a really close battle. It was tied 16-16, but it ends up going down to the undecided. The random votes are choosing which one's going to move on, and it ends up being I almost said Dinosaur Island. No, that's not it. Draftosaurus. They're all the same. You're building a dinosaur theme park. Come on now. Draftosaurus that moves forward in an 18-17 vote into the quarterfinals. Next round, we have Land versus Sea versus Welcome To. All three of them. The thruple is back, and they're ready to make things happen. Land versus Sea, that Carcassonne killer. Welcome To, that Roland Wright killer. Each a titan in their own right. Both of these games feel fun to me. I haven't played Land vs. Sea. I have played Welcome To. I enjoy it. I think I would vote Land vs. Sea here. I think the promise of Land vs. Sea is still really exciting to me. And it's one that I'd want to pick up and try out. So maybe it's that newness of having not tried it that makes me want to vote for it. Welcome To, though, it could just be me fighting against popular sentiment, because popular sentiment is pretty strong that Welcome To is a fun game, and it is the popular sentiment that overtakes Mr. Unpopular here. Again, thank you for tuning in. You're the only people who I can talk to. Remember to like and subscribe, please. We're so close to 10K. So if you're not subscribed, just do me and you've made it this far, do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 10K. Sorry, you're watching this, I assume in the future, let's get to 100K. You know, we're so close. Let's just get over that bar. Anyway, as I was saying, popular sentiment says that Welcome To is the one to move on. Land vs. Sea is out of the competition. Welcome To moves forward in a 20-15 vote. Next round, we have Under Falling Skies, a new competitor into this tournament, versus One Deck Dungeon. Under Falling Skies got the bye, and it is the single player only Space Invaders. If you've ever played Space Invaders or heard of it, the arcade game, that's what Under Falling Skies represents and replicates. And it has this dice placement mechanic. You choose a dice to choose your action, but it also chooses how many alien spaceships will descend and how quickly they will descend. So higher dice give you better stuff, but it also causes them to ramp up their descent as well. So you have to balance that as you make your way through. One Deck Dungeon is also pretty much a solo game too, as you make your way through that dungeon trying to eliminate those big bads. So it's solo versus solo. Under Falling Skies is a true solo, One Deck Dungeon isn't. But it's Under Falling Skies that moves forward in a very dominant 26-8 vote. Smashes One Deck Dungeon out of the competition, which is surprising because it had a lot of staying power having beat Kingdomino, which I thought was going to be here for a long time. How are your picks doing? Are they still in the tournament? Have they all been burnt for eternity? it's one of them, let me know. Or they're outside waiting to get into the tournament saying, why didn't you let me in? In which case, drop your favorite affordable game down below as well, because we're not going to see any new additions. And usually that would be me being sarcastic or a little wink to people who know that we would see new additions, but we're really not. This is it. These are your choices. And now you have one deck fewer as Under Falling Skies moves forward. Here's one I'm excited for. One Night Werewolf versus Seven Wonders Duel. I think One Night Werewolf can take it here. I think the power of the 5-minute round is strong. I think everybody used their extra votes on Seven Wonders Duel in the previous round. And I personally would vote for One Night Werewolf here. I love that social deduction aspect of it, that it plays so quickly, and Seven Wonders Duel is fine. It's just fine. So it'll be fine for it to get gone out of the competition. Oh, okay, Seven Wonders Duel wins in an overwhelming majority. 23-12. Just kidding, 23-13. It got a pity random vote, and yes, I'm taking it. Yes, I did it honorably. I didn't buff the numbers. I swear. No, I did buff the numbers. I probably cheated here. I don't cheat. Come on. Let's move to the other side of the bracket. We have a new entry, Cartographers, another roll and write versus Jaipur. Cartographers has really been put on the map recently because you're going to be making a map for your queen as you sketch out the land and make the best map. You're just trying to get the most points. It's the roll and write. You get some stuff, you use it the most efficiently, draw on a map. You know what it is. Do we even need to talk about it? Don't you think Jaipur is going to knock it out of the park? Here I probably would vote for Cartographers, honestly. Jaipur is fun, but Jaipur has been around for a long time. Again, Jaipur is one of those where I think its age potentially shows. It's still fun though. I think I've just played it too much, right? And I don't think you should knock a game for having played it a whole bunch of times versus one that I haven't played. I know it's a sin I haven't played Cartographers. I expected that I would in numerous situations with people who had Cartographers, and we just never got around to it. But there was a lot of support for Cartographers. This is Jaipur's exit out of the competition and out of your collection, unfortunately, as it's been burned. And it is Cartographers that moves forward in an 18-12 vote. Next round, Fort versus Codenames. This is one I'm excited for. I really like Fort. My friend Matt owns Fort, so I probably don't ever need to play it, but it's something that he brings a lot because it has a small package and it has a really interesting back and forth gameplay. And there's multiple ways to win in Fort as well. You can speed ahead and trigger the end of the game before other people get their engines going, which I kind of like. It is up against Codenames though. Codenames coming in at that $20 Canadian still represents incredible value, especially for people who aren't that into games. Just One probably could have made it into this competition as well. For me, Codenames is still better than Just One. I know a lot of people said that Just One kind of kills Codenames, and I thought that would be the case, but I think Codenames has the staying power where Just One, it gets, if you play with the same group, you kind of get it a little bit sooner, and because it's cooperative, I never find that there's much of a point to play for the points of it. And I like having team versus team because then it feels like the stakes are a bit higher. But it's not Codenames that moves forward. It is Fort. I was expecting Codenames to move forward, but I think the dense, fun gameplay of Fort really deserves to be talked about, and I'm happy that it wins in a 17-14 vote. Next round, we have our last new entrant into the competition. Well, I mean, I guess there were new entrants that we didn't talk about, but these were in the bracket that you saw at the beginning. You were able to choose from them. We have Unmatched, Houdini versus the Genie, specifically that one pack versus Radlands. And these are both two-player games. Unmatched, I feel, is a two-player game. You can, I believe, play with more people if you have different characters, but it's best as a two-player battler. Unmatched is fun, but some of their boxes are more expensive and are outside the range of this $30 realm. So we really wanted to talk about just what is a two-character pack. A two-character pack will usually fall into that $29 Canadian realm. And so I wanted to see if a two-pack of Unmatched provide the value to go far in this competition. Because I feel like a lot of people have enjoyed the variety of characters, and some of the higher rated sets, like the Battle of Legends, there's a set of 4 and that comes in at like $45 or something. So I wanted to see if Unmatched could hold a candle to whoever it got put up against, in this case Radlands, and the answer, well, it's a resounding no. I think Unmatched is a good system, but I think people like the full package of Radlands that comes with it, without having to worry about which characters are the best. There's so much content for Unmatched that's a bit hard to parse through. And so it's Radlands that does move forward in a very dominant 21-9 vote. I was expecting Unmatched to go on a tear here, because you could get other 2 character packs. You could get the Dinosaur versus Jeff Goldblum. I think that's a pack. But I think more of the higher rated characters are bundled in larger boxes. So if you want to get into the Unmatched system, you're going to have to pay for it, let me tell you. And it might be nice having a bit of that variability baked into that single box rather than just getting a 2-player. Anyway, next round, our last round of the round of 16, we have Sushi Go Party versus Forbidden Island, the set collection easy drafting game versus Pandemic Light. Which is the best value here? And this is tough. Both of these come in obnoxious tins. Seriously, who puts your box in a tin? It just hurts all the other boxes on the shelf. Sure, you're indestructible, but don't you care about the aesthetics of the shelf? Maybe a tin is more environmentally friendly? I don't know if it is. It doesn't matter. Games in tins should not exist. And I hope both of you lose the competition just for that. But I think Forbidden Island does represent a good amount of value here for Pandemic Light. You can get a nice, decently satisfying game experience in a pretty reasonable price point. Although Sushi Go Party does have that variability, and having that variability and having the options of Sushi Go was in our last bracket, I believe. I don't know if it did well. I think it got out almost immediately. But the added variability that you can get with Sushi Go Party, you should never get Sushi Go because Sushi Go Party exists. You can play the base game of Sushi Go, and you can get all of these additional options with Sushi Go Party and the miso soup. Have I mentioned a miso soup? But this one was really close. It ended in a 20-19 vote. Just one vote separated these games, but it is Sushi Go Party that moves forward, and Forbidden Island is out of here. We're on to the quarterfinals. Now we can really ramp things up with Draftosaurus versus Welcome To. We know what these 2 games are. We know it's building a dinosaur park versus building just a house, building your neighborhood, or building a death maze, pretending to be an amusement park. It's never been a good idea to breed dinosaurs, and it never will. Stop it, science. So with that in mind, we have to take the peaceful option. The Tyrannosaurus Rex almost was able to snatch an extra vote, but it was just out of reach. They were right there, and he couldn't get it. There was a pile of extra votes right there, and he missed it. And the dinosaurs have gone extinct and have been taken over by Janice and Doreen's beautiful hedge gardens that are etched all across the neighborhood. Our next round is Under Falling Skies versus Seven Wonders Duel. I don't know how this one is going to go. I think Seven Wonders Duel here will win because I know people are passionate about it. People have been passionate about Seven Wonders Duel throughout this whole competition. I think that's worth mentioning, that even though I'm not a huge fan, other people are. Or at least they were until the Space Invaders came to play and they thought, no, we're going to move ahead to the more futuristic era. That's the theme of this affordable deathmatch. All the stuff that's in the past can stay in the past because it is Under Falling Skies that wins in a 21-12 vote. A solid performance, knocking Seven Wonders Duel out of the competition. That is a huge titan to overthrow. And if you're a solo gamer and you haven't played Under Falling Skies, what are you waiting for at this point? Hopefully you still might be able to play it and all copies of it don't burn. I guess we'll have to wait and see. On the other side of the bracket, we have Cartographers now versus Fort, the roll and write genre, versus Toys and Pizza. Getting your cards of friends, playing a certain type, and then letting everyone else rip the other friends from your grasp because you didn't pay enough attention to them. I'm sorry, Jordan, okay? Actually, no, I don't want to call that fake person Jordan. Jordan was a real person in, I think, 2nd grade, who was my friend, and then told me that he couldn't be friends with me anymore because I wasn't cool enough. That really hurt my feelings at the time. But look at me now, Jordan. Look at all the cool stuff I have behind me. So on that depressing note, let's eliminate all those friends from existence, because who needs friends, right? Who needs friends when we have our maps? I would rather sit at home with my cartography set. Who says I wasn't cool? And it is Cartographers that moves forward in a pretty dominant 19-12 vote. I wasn't sure how that one was going to go. I wanted Fort to keep moving forward, because I've played it, and I haven't played Cartographers. But I've heard Cartographers is so good, and so many people I know who don't play board games that often also own copies of it and regularly play it and enjoy it. And so I like the amount of players that can play it. I like that Roll and Rights can provide that, so all right, Cartographers, you get yourself a pass. Now on the other side of things, we have Radlands versus Sushi Go Party, and my feeling here is that Radlands is going to take it. In fact, when I look at the votes right now, it seems like Radlands should have taken it, because everybody on Patreon is trolling me and just threw in all of their extra votes after the matchup was cast, and everyone who did their extra votes for Sushi Go Party, well, they removed them or switched them over, which don't think I didn't see it, and don't think you didn't give me a panic attack that I thought I called the wrong game. No, but I didn't call the wrong game. Radlands is out of here. Sushi Go Party manages to pull off an incredible upset. I expected Radlands to be in the finals. I've heard such great things about it as this two-player head-to-head card game, which everybody loves and everybody wants to make. But it was Sushi Go Party that actually moves forward in a 16-14 vote. I guess you shouldn't have wasted all your extra votes on Seven Wonders Duel if you wanted Radlands to move forward. The people have spoken, and the people are hungry for miso. Let's keep the miso train going, baby. Every time, Sushi Go Party's been playing miso, and no one else has been playing miso. That's been its strategy, and it's working in this tournament. Sushi Go Party has been entering the matchup, throwing a pot of miso in their opponent's face, and then just throwing a match at them, turning around and walking away and just lighting them on fire. That's how every battle has gone with Sushi Go Party. I guess the miso was alcohol-based, because they go up in an instant, and they're not prepared for the dirty tricks that Sushi Go has prepped. But with that, it brings us to our final four. Welcome to Under Falling Skies, Cartographers, and Sushi Go Party. This is not the final four that I was expecting. I was expecting Welcome 2 to make it here. I thought Seven Wonders Duel would make it. I thought Fort might make it, and I thought Radlands might make it, and all of them just got knocked out in the past round. So who knows who's going to take the title, the throne of being the best affordable game out there for you to add to your collection and enjoy and experience. And we're going to find out right now with Welcome 2 versus Under Falling Skies. I mean, it's got to be Welcome 2, right? It could go either way. Is this a fake out? Or is this a real out? Might be a real out. It's worth noting that when we get to these semifinals, there are no more extra votes. Extra votes have been banned from the tournament because these games must be won on pure merit alone. And to be fair, we do have a pretty active solo community over on the Discord. It's nice. It's nice hanging out. Everybody gets to go and play with themselves and then come back and talk to each other about it. That's what we like to do. Who doesn't like chatting with your pals and relaying the experience of playing with yourself? I think it's a very healthy thing to do. Good for the prostate. So that could give Under Falling Skies a push, but I wasn't expecting of how much a push. Under Falling Skies does move forward into the finals in a pretty dominant 19-12 vote. Welcome 2 is out of here. I expected Welcome 2 to be in the finals, and now it's been knocked out as well. What is going on here? What in the sweet miso soup is going on here? And that's what we're going to see in our next match, Cartographers versus Sushi Go Party. Will a Roll and Write manage to make its way into the finals? Because there were quite a few, and Roll and Writes do provide quite a lovely value. Speaking of Roll and Rights, Dinosaur Island Rar and Write could have been in this tournament, but it's been in a few tournaments previously, so I didn't want to include it, but it does fall into this, I think, pretty affordable price point, and that's an awesome Roll and Write. Cartographers has got to stand up for the Roll and Rights, but will they be able to dodge the miso soup? That's the question, because Cartographers stepped into the ring. This is true, this is what happened. They stepped into the ring ready to fight, and they turned to look at their queen who wanted them to cartographize all over the land, just really cartographize all over it. As they looked up, miso soup, not miso soup, we're just calling it miso soup now, Sushi Go Party, who was under the sand, because of course it was a gladiatorial stadium, Sushi Go Party chose a desert scene in honor of Forbidden Island. No, that doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. That's what they did in honor of Forbidden Island's brother. They rose from the middle of the ring covered in sand holding 2 containers of miso soup, splashed them right onto the back of cartographers. People said it was a dirty trick, but you know what Sushi Go Party would say as they threw the match and walked into the finals. They said, wasabi. Wasabi. They threw wasabi on them. Gosh, was it spicy. And the flames consumed cartographers who had actually only walked into this matchup with a bunch of maps on them. So it really wasn't a fair fight. They should have done their research and knew that Sushi Go was gonna have a fire party of their own and do the same miso soup trick. They did not bring any miso soup to counteract it. And it is Sushi Go Party that moved forward in an almost as dominant vote as Under Falling Skies, 18-12. Must have slept in, I guess. And so we are here at the final round. Under Falling Skies versus Sushi Go Party. Who could have predicted this? Certainly not me. Let me know if you did predict it. Are your favorites still in here? You've got one last chance to redeem yourself for your foolish picks that you had earlier on. The time is now. Which one of these are you going to pick? Under Falling Skies, Sushi Go, miso. One or the other. Can the miso soup trick win again? Or have the Space Invaders been using miso soup to fuel their spaceships this entire time? They've been gassing up. We thought... That's why they're coming to our planet, because they know we have so much miso. They've been smelling it from the flames. The trails have been making their way into space, and the aliens are coming down thinking, okay, we can fuel our spaceships with this. Miso is very rare where we come from, and we're very excited to get that miso soup splashed all over us. This one was a very tight battle. It was tied 15-15, then it was tied 16-16, then somebody swapped their vote, then somebody added another one. The final score was 17-16 for the winner. Ultimately, the game that represents the most value out there, the best of the affordable games, the best game in this price point bracket. Well, in that, there can only be one. And of course, by one, I don't mean a solo player. I mean 1 cup of miso soup. The aliens burnt it all up. They flew their spaceships down, and they actually combusted. They overloaded on miso soup as Sushi Go Party just dumped the rest of the pot on them. Turns out they were saving it for a surprise splash. That's what happened. It is Sushi Go Party that manages to come out on top in one vote, one deciding vote to take out Under Falling Skies. They burned Herbaceous alive. They didn't use the miso soup there. They took it easy. They wanted to save some tricks. They knew they would take out that opponent without their dirty tricks. Then they overcame Forbidden Island with just that one vote. They took out Radlands with just one vote. Then they took out Cartographers, and finally, in the same pathway of just one vote, they mixed and matched their sets of cards to achieve pure victory. Sushi Go Party is a great game. Congratulations, you are the winner of this death match. Go out and get yourself a copy of Sushi Go Party and not Sushi Go. You could do Sushi Go as well. It's pretty fun. No. You know why? Because there is no miso. Sushi Go Party is our champion. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, if you want to participate in the voting, go sign up for Patreon. It's just a couple bucks a month. It's like 10 cents a video. And you get to have a fun vote and discussion every day in our next month's bracket, which I'm really excited about. I'm more excited as it's going on, even just with our first vote, is games with the best expansion. That's going to be the one coming up next month, is games with the best expansions. Now, this isn't the best expansions. It's games that are increased and improved by their expansions. Some people say essential expansions, but I think it's also going to be very fun and interesting to compare all of the expansions and how much do they all add to the base game as a package, because some may not do it, and that might be a strike against the game. Some might just be great games that people want to play, and some might be improved so drastically by their expansions that they might sail forward into victory. I have no idea who's going to come out on top in this, but I am excited to find out. If you want to participate in those daily votes, check us out over on Patreon. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but you can bet you know what card I'm playing in front of me right now. Miso soup, baby. Let's go have ourselves a Sushi Go Party. See you in the next one.